And now it's time for the news review. Sorry about that. There was a problem earlier. Of course, we were talking about the Palestinian resistance movement, which is calling for greater unity now against Israel during this holy month of Ramadan. Hamas has urged now Palestinians to head to al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, al-Quds. I'd like to welcome my guests to discuss this situation. Out of Toronto, Canada, Mr. Zafar Bankash from Press and International and journalist, and Mr. Saeb Shaath, author and lecturer out of Belfast. Thank you both for being with us. Well, let's start this off in Toronto. Zafar, what is going on? I mean, we have seen ever since the beginning of the month of Ramadan, the Israelis increasing pressure on Palestinians. I mean, what are they trying to get at this moment, and why now, in your perspective?
Well, as you mentioned, from the start of Ramadan, which is a very sacred month for Muslims, and they head to al-Aqsa Mosque for prayers, etc. The Zionists are trying to prevent the Palestinians. They've been doing it in the past, but at this particular time, this year, there are, I think, two factors at work, or three. The first is that the Israelis held elections only recently, and in those elections, a number of these right-wing extremist Zionist party members were elected to the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. And these, of course, extremists want to push their agenda. Their agenda is to essentially drive the Palestinians out of the whole of al-Quds, Jerusalem, because the Zionists want to occupy it completely. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, of course, is facing criminal charges, and he also has to show himself to be very tough. And so, essentially, what he is doing is allowing these Zionist thugs. Basically, these are thugs, heavily armed thugs that go around. They've been chanting slogans like "Death to Arabs," etc. Imagine if the Palestinians had chanted slogans saying "Death to the Jews," what the reaction of the world would be. And yet here it is that they are chanting these terrible slogans, racist slogans, showing openly that they are racist and thugs. And yet it's the Palestinians that have been arrested, 53 of them, more than 100 injured. And of course, the third point is that there are determined efforts by the Zionists to occupy more and more Palestinian homes in Jerusalem. We know that this has been going on for a long time in the Silwan neighborhood and others. So all of these factors combined is pushing the Zionists to continue or to escalate their aggression against the Palestinian people at this time.
Well, Saeb, tell me about now Hamas has made a call for the Palestinians actually to head to al-Aqsa Mosque in order to defend the people's right to go there and pray. How likely is this to lead to more clashes, and are we headed to another intifada?
It's look like it, since the Palestinian people are aware of there is the biblical historical basin scheme or plan to Judaize a huge part of the Jerusalem, al-Quds and its surrounding area. The colonial settlers who seeking, with the help of the police and the entity as well, to erase all the Islamic and Christian Arabic signs of Jerusalem. And they trying to Judaize area extending from the Jordan Valley to the Mount of Olives, reaching to the old holy city of al-Quds, the old city, with the Haram al-Sharif and the al-Aqsa Mosque. The latest attempt, which has sparked all of these clashes, to control Bab al-Amud, the Damascus Gate, was part of this scheme. And since, as my colleague mentioned, since the beginning of Ramadan, they were intending the Zionist police to eliminate the presence of the Palestinians in the holy Aqsa Mosque and Haram al-Sharif after Isha prayer, and to put more blockades around that. But the Palestinian solidarity with each other, which is amazingly came from the historical occupied Palestine 58 from al-Fahim, Angry crowds arrived in there and broke through the gates and surrounded the Aqsa Mosque and took back Bab al-Amud and its square from these Zionist thugs and settler thugs in there. This in itself was followed by calls from the resistance movement like Hamas and the PFLP and other groups in Palestine.
Okay.
Kind of victory and surround and protect the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Okay, and where do you see this going? Let me cross back over to Zafar. Where is this headed to? Because it's obvious more and more as this continues that what Palestinians are saying is that resistance is the only way. With the situation exacerbating right now, and now the calls to basically show up at Masjid al-Aqsa, tell me overall your perspective of where this is going this month of Ramadan.
Well, you see, the thing is that the Palestinians simply cannot abandon their right to Masjid al-Aqsa, or in fact the whole of the holy compound. And the Zionists are trying to, first of all, prevent them from going there. And this is done both by the Zionist settlers as well as the Israeli army and police, heavily armed, all of them, and they are trying to terrorize the Palestinian people. Secondly, their aim is that if the Palestinians would not desist from going there, that the Zionist settlers as well as the police and army would attack them, as we have witnessed. So if this continues, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this will escalate, that there will be more and more clashes, and that there will be more massacres of the Palestinian people. But in that situation, I think this becomes incumbent upon Muslims around the world, as well as other fair-minded people of other faiths, to stand up with the Palestinian people to defend their fundamental rights. Because without this international effort, I'm afraid the Zionists would continue with their aggressive policies of killings, of murder, of arrests. We know already that there are more than 5,500 Palestinians in Israeli prisons. That includes women as well as children. And they are being mistreated in horrible ways. So I'm afraid this issue is likely to continue to escalate unless and until the Israelis back off and allow the Palestinians their fundamental right, particularly in this month of Ramadan, to be able to visit the Al-Aqsa Mosque and to continue with their worship and prayers, because this is their holy month and they have every right to be there. The Zionists have no right to be there, but they are obviously acting like colonial settler thugs, and they are brutalizing the Palestinian people.
Thank you both for being with us on this news review. Out of Toronto, Zafar Bankash, Director of Institute of Contemporary Islamic Thought, and Saeb Shaath, author and political expert out of Belfast.